I'd like to introduce you properly to Dorothy Wordsworth. She was William's sister and his companion throughout his adult life. She was also, importantly, a writer in her own right. Though they lived together for shorter periods before 1799, Dove Cottage was their first real home. They bought the furniture, they made the curtains, and they were able to live as they wanted to live. It meant a great deal to them to live together independently following a childhood spent apart after the death of both their parents. Dorothy kept a wonderful journal here between 1800 and 1803, in which she recorded their daily life together. She evokes a sense of place and she creates a sense of home. Here we are in Dove Cottage itself. This room was called the front parlour or house place. It's worth thinking for a moment about just what it meant to Dorothy to set up home. At the turn of the 19th century, this was a remarkable opportunity for a woman. Dorothy had already experienced the life of a single woman on her own with no means of her own. She lived with relatives, she helped with the parish work, she ran the local Sunday school and looked after the family's children. Instead, this opportunity offered Dorothy a home of her own making. Sitting next to the fire, you can really feel the homeliness of the place, I think. This is a portrait of Pepper the dog. It's said that Sir Walter Scott, the novelist, gave Pepper to the Wordsworths because Scott bred this particular kind of terrier. This is Dorothy's bedroom, which was also on the ground floor of Dove Cottage. And here we have a silhouette of Dorothy, and this is the only known image of her as a young woman. These are the small sticks that she would have used to clean her teeth. But unfortunately, they weren't terribly effective. Dorothy had a set of false wooden teeth by the age of 40. When William married Mary Hutchinson, a good friend of Dorothy's, in 1802, Dorothy gave up this bedroom for the newly married couple because the roof in theirs leaked. I think that really shows us Dorothy's generous nature. This is the kitchen. When William and Dorothy arrived in Grasmere in 1799, they employed a neighbour, Molly Fisher, for 2 shillings a week to come in for 2 or 3 hours a day. Molly lit fires for them, she washed dishes, she prepared vegetables and she cleaned for them. Molly did the small weekly clothes wash, but she also helped with what was known as the Great Wash, which happened every 5 weeks. We also know from her journals that Dorothy sometimes helped Molly with the washing and the ironing. Dorothy also baked, looked after the garden and mended clothes. This tea caddy belonged to the Wordsworths. They were very economical with their household expenses. For example, tea, which was a great luxury at this time, was used, dried and then used again. And even after this, Dorothy then dried the leaves again and gave them to her neighbours to make tea with. This is the upstairs sitting room where William would have written some of his most famous poetry. Dorothy's journals show her considerable skills as a writer too. The journals are a different kind of writing to the poetry that William wrote, but they're similarly alive to the beauties of the landscape and to the poverty of those who lived around them. The garden was particularly important to Dorothy Wordsworth. Can you imagine her sitting there writing her journal? Dove Cottage was made into a home partly by Dorothy's writings. In an 1802 entry in the journal, she remembers their arrival in Grasmere in December 1799 with the following words: "We were left to ourselves and had turned our whole hearts to Grasmere as a home in which we were to rest." They lived in Dove Cottage for 8.5 years, but even after they left, they continued to refer to it as our cottage. Theirs was a creative partnership which we'll continue to explore later in this week. First though, in the next few steps, we're going to look more closely at these journals as remarkable works in their own right.